Hey, what's up everyone? Sean here and welcome to another new video. Now, in this one, Apple just held their WWDC 2026 conference, which is basically, if you're unaware of it, which no one really should be anymore, but if you're unaware of it, it is their kind of kickoff to the new kind of calendar year, essentially, for where they do a bunch of now software introductions of what is coming out with new software across the entire product spectrum, from computers, iPads. I mean, they're all their own names. So it's now iOS, I believe, iOS 27, and they are going by the year now. So the software version, which is a fun switch to happen like about a year or two ago. Now, this video is not going to be a super duper deep dive or an all encompassing deep dive on everything about the event. I'm gonna do an overview kind of video like this one, where I kind of do like a little bit of each thing. But I do plan on doing many more episodes or more videos, I should say, about each individual thing and just my thoughts and feelings on it, because there's a lot to go into, and there's a lot of things that I saw in the keynote with how they presented stuff and how they are announcing things now, and just overall just the whole spectrum of things that is interesting. Some things that where I'm kind of shocked that they're still doing it, or just things that I would just kind of be like, okay, really, we're still doing this. So we'll see how it goes. But basically, so again, so WWDC 2026 is now, presentation wise, is done. Now the big highlights I would say for me is that they essentially are really kicking into high gear the parental restrictions or guidance or whatever you want to call it for their software. So the idea that you can now further restrict or further control all of your kids' devices, whether it's no matter what device it is, an iPad, an iPhone, whatever it might be. And this one is probably the most impactful for me in my life, because of the fact that I do have kids that are under the age of 10, and also an older one that's a teenager, almost, or going to be a teenager soon. And how it's interesting to me that they really kind of double down on the idea of parental controls, because of the fact that they know kids have smartphones or some kind of device in their life, whether it's an iPad or a phone or a watch or whatever. And the interesting thing to me about it was the fact that they didn't from what they used to do, in my opinion, is they used to kind of dissuade people from even getting their kids into devices. They would just kind of they used to market more phones and stuff for adults indirectly, and then iPads for kids and gaming, and they would even have it run ads essentially with with kids using their iPads. But it wasn't really an overall marketing kind of thing or overall push of especially not parental controls over what they're doing now. So I think it's a good thing, and also kind of a little sketchy at the same time, and I'll explain why. So I think it's a good thing that they're offering much more transparency and much more control over things like apps, as far as how many hours a day or what times that the kids can be on their devices, and that you as a parent can control everything as far as just app approval or disapproval, buying apps, what games they are, what app they're using, and what time of the day, and so on and so forth. But it's funny because another YouTuber mentioned this, which I didn't think about it, but it really makes more sense now that after I mentioned it, is that they really are, Apple, I should say, is pushing the idea of getting kids younger and younger age-wise into their devices as far as a gateway product, which makes sense. Whereas it used to be more of a pro tool, as an adult pro tool, and or getting your parents or grandparents into an iPhone used to be the big push. But now from what I saw on the presentation, it was a lot more pushed or control over kids' content, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and all the different things. Which is, again, it's a good positive. That's a good thing. I don't disagree with that part of it, but definitely a different kind of push over controlling what your kids are doing on their devices, not to get them off the devices necessarily, just controlling what they're doing when they're on the devices. And to me, as a parent, that's a very, very interesting divide of how they used to do it, where and if you I think it was a few years ago during WWDC actually, where they would flat out say, we want you to almost put your phones down or put your devices down and go outside, and then they turned it into an Apple Watch kind of like an ad in a way, or an Apple Watch kind of push over being on a device, and they didn't aim it as an age group or name kids specifically, but you can kind of tell that they were like, "Hey, get off your phone," and they called it some trendy name too, that Apple always is kind of known for pushing what it is. But now with this presentation, they didn't do that at all. They very much essentially put it to a thing where they're like, "Hey, we know kids are using these devices no matter what we say or what we design. We know kids are on them a lot, especially young teenagers and all the new generation. So we're gonna give you the tools, quote unquote, to control what they're doing, who they're messaging, what apps they're using, when they're using, all kind of stuff to give you more control over it." But which again tells me that they want kids on them. They want kids to be using them to get a younger generation to use them and become more frequent with them and more used to them as a gateway product to then, of course, get them into Apple earlier and earlier and earlier in life, which will then turn into a lifelong customer. Is the idea, which is just very interesting because they did not used to, like when I was younger in my 20s, and I'm almost 40 now, but in my 20s that was not the Apple way. That was not Apple's marketing at all. They did not do that. It was more towards, students, like college students, like with their new Macs, that kind of thing, professionals, and being a pro tool essentially was the overall idea. And to be honest, my biggest criticism over this whole entire presentation was the fact that there really wasn't any, if at all, if unless I missed it, but any kind of professional usage anywhere. It was parental controls, new software, of course, coming in the fall, which I'll get into that in another minute by itself, and then a huge emphasis on Apple Intelligence and Siri AI and the whole new way of doing it and how it is going to take over your phone, and that's another conversation by itself too. But not any kind of emphasis on professional usage on these things. It's all about who your kids using them and then how smarter they're going to get. Now, so that's one area. So the other thing I want to talk about too about this, which I found very interesting, is the fact that Apple does this thing where, and I've been an Apple user since I was, a teenager probably. No, I was in my late teen. I was late teens, early 20s. I would say it was when I really got it because the first iPhone didn't even come out until I was already out of high school. So basically, like I remember, or I should say that Apple usually does this thing with WWDC, like especially where they will, because it's all software. It used to be hardware for the most part, like new computers every now and then, but now it's all really software announcements and what they've been working on, that kind of thing, which is fine. But the interesting thing about it is the fact that they do this thing where they will do a very seemingly massive software overhaul aesthetically, like the design, the UI, everything that you see and you're using, that you're touching, all that usually gets overdone every couple of years or every 5 or 10 years, and they always call it the biggest advancement ever in iOS or whatever it's called, which is not wrong. It's just because it is a new interface for them and design wise. But they always do a massive overhaul, and then for whatever reason, still after however many years now, it's been 20 years now or 20 years next year for the first iPhone, which is crazy. But they still have software that's clunky and buggy on its first big release. Even my iPhone that I'm filming this on, which is the 17 Pro Max, the newest model. The crazy thing about it is that I bought this iPhone when it first came out, so it's like probably one of the first ones initially off the launch line, and it still has software issues. It's been through every software update since it's been out, and I still have software issues with bugs everywhere. And that's a very common Apple thing, unfortunately, where they do a thing where they do a huge overall. So in this case, it's on iOS 26 still, for obvious reasons. That's what's out, and it's buggy for a long time. And they always do this really interesting overhaul where or to say after the overhaul is done, the next year after that, they focus or double down on the idea of fixing all the really big errors or bugs or things that are just annoying that they can't necessarily fix or I guess they can fix, but they choose not to, I should say, in the incremental updates of like the point ones, point 0, whatever it might be. They choose to push it off a year to the next big, annual release essentially, and to put it out as a big package essentially as an advanced feature update, which it really isn't. Because I would say the majority, if not all, of the bugs, and the bugs that I usually deal with on a day-to-day basis are things like where my camera won't launch from the home screen. My flashlight won't launch or adjust lighting on the home screen, and I'll have to most commonly shut my entire phone down, and even the vibrate will stop working. And it's not a phone problem; it's a software issue. I know how it works from just using iPhones forever, and it's interesting to me that they don't choose to fix that stuff on a smaller update. They always push it off a year and choose to release it as a bigger update because I feel like they to me it's like they don't have enough to release after a year, so they save up all these updates and save up all these issues and bugs that they can just squash, quote unquote, a year in. And they've done this forever, at least since the iPhone came out, where like once they got the software where it was, more functional, that kind of thing. And again, it's whenever they do a big overhaul, like a big software jump of the UI, that's a big change. It's usually really aesthetically pleasing for the initial launch of it, for the most part, and then they get all the weird bugs and like the weird annoying things that are just not fixed ever in the smaller updates a year later. And then they start to then after that typically improve the services that they're including on the software and offer more things and try and get more money out of you. Again, I'm not blaming them for any of this stuff. It's just how Apple's operated for a very, very long time. And I've just seen the trend for now, again, since the iPhone next year in 2027 will be 20 years old, which is crazy again. But because of that, I've just noticed the trend where they just do the big overhauls, the UI changes, and they all of a sudden will then save all the bug updates and the big fixes that are supposed to fix what you're having issues with, and they'll do that a year later for whatever reason. And they do release small stuff incrementally, but it's not anything it's never fixed my phone, I should say, for the most part. So again, I just noticed that part of it. Now the other part of it too, which I'll go through as an overview. Again, I'm gonna do this in a deep dive in future videos. But is the idea or the discussion about this whole Apple Intelligence, what I would call a failure of a launch, and also the new Siri AI. Now, again, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into these two because I think that they're separate. Because Siri, I remember when Siri was acquired by Apple, and then Steve Jobs was still alive, and he literally had to fend off this question of if it was the beginning of AI, and he always, always, always in every interview ever, whenever he was asked that, was always like quickly responding like saying no, no, Siri is a search assistant function. Search assistant function. He always said that in those words almost verbatim. And he answered it differently with different interviews, but overall he said it's a search assistant function. But the problem was that Siri has never really been that good. I remember trying it out because I thought it was a cool idea in the first iPhone that came out, and I forget which iPhone it launched on. I think it was the iPhone. It was whatever there was. I think it wasn't a 3GS. I think it was a 4S. Maybe it was. It was the S version when there was a whole bunch of drama online where people confused it between being like Siri, like a S for Siri, or Speed was the nickname for it too. Either way. And so again, I remember Steve Jobs talking about it as being a very like as far as like a search assistant kind of thing on your phone. It was only on device. That's it. And then a couple years ago now, they did the Apple Intelligence launch, or the announcement of it at least. And again, I've heard I've seen news articles about it where basically Apple in this case again will they announced what Apple Intelligence is, how it helps you, and then do all the products announcements, which they do every year, of course, and then it just never really came out to my knowledge. Like I don't like I know it's on my phone, but I never use it. It even was given its own button to use on my 17 Pro Max, and I never use it because I don't really trust AI for Apple Intelligence on its own. I'll again another video on that part too because that's a whole other conversation. But the idea of now combining Apple Intelligence with Siri AI and just calling it Siri AI, or combining Siri and combining Apple Intelligence into one concise thing, if you want to call it that, is another thing because all the product demos that I saw, or device demos that I saw in the video of them demoing this stuff out, it is cool. It is a neat thing, I would say, that it does all this stuff as far as like Siri jumping into your phone memory and going into your messages, or the weirdest one I saw, which threw me off quite a bit actually, which is cool but scary, honestly, for me, for how I feel about AI in general. But is the idea that that the passwords app, which is involved with AI and on its own, will, when you save your password for whatever website you're using it on, or anything for that matter, that it will detect if it detects from what I read of it, if it detects a weak or compromised password on a website, it'll go to that website, forget the password that you have, enhance it and redo it and reset it, and then do it all on its own, and you won't even see it happening. And that on its own is a very, very interesting but scary, scary thing to me, because I don't really want my phone ever changing things like that for me without telling me. I mean, maybe it will tell you. I'm not sure. That there's not really an answer for that yet. It wasn't really, from what I saw, clearly defined or depicted or explained how it works. I just saw the video of it doing it, and like what do you call those? Just a demo model of it. So who knows how it really works, and on its own. So that's one thing that I thought was very, again, interesting, but also sketchy and weird to me in the case. But again, the idea of combining Siri and combining Apple Intelligence with it to have it go to have basically control over your device and your information, although they always say it's only on device and never goes in the cloud or on the internet or anywhere else for that matter. That's an interesting idea to me, and all the demos that I saw of them in the video of doing it across the board, from calendars to airline and flights and to messaging people and modifying open table reservations, like all those things. Like, it's a cool idea. I think it's a cool idea that they're enhancing it so much now, because I feel like separately Siri sucked. It sucked for a long time. It's worked every now and again, but it really it was all with even just simple voice dictation, and it never really was improved. And then doubling that up with Apple Intelligence and its failure to launch on its own and how bad it even got. And I never use it, so it's one of those things where they both kind of failed. And I can definitely feel, or seems like Apple is definitely doubling down on trying to fix their acquisitions or things that they invented that just didn't launch very well or at all and just didn't work out. And I credit them for trying to fix them and kind of combine them together to make them a better overall thing. But I'm still of the time frame of tech where, for me, I don't personally need my phone to do all that for me. Everyone's different, that's for sure. Like, everyone's different on how they want. Like my wife, for example, as soon as she saw that part of the video, she thought it was cool. She thought it was rad that you could just have Siri AI, as it's being called now, go into your messages, make a reservation or make a calendar event, and do it all for you based on a text message, and amongst many other different different variations of that too. She thought it was cool. I thought it was interesting, but not needed for what I do with my phone and just how I use my device. So I don't know. It's a cool idea, I would say, and again, it's interesting. I'll say it again, but I don't know if it's really necessary, and we'll see in the future how it really is implemented. Now, I'm gonna finish off this video in a few minutes here because I don't want to make it too long. But I will say another thing too, is that with WWDC in general, one of my biggest gripes, and I felt this way for a long time, is the fact that they do this every year where, and I'm not mad about WWDC being like a June thing and having software announcement. That's all good. But the fact that they do the announcement of announcing the software, demoing it lightly, giving you all these like thousands and thousands of underneath the hood, updates for software, and then you can do the beta if you want to. It used to be, and thankfully now it's a public beta if you really want to go that far. They didn't used to do that until a couple years ago. But you can do the public beta if you want to, and that's available like halfway through the summer. And then the newest iPhone comes out, of course, in usually September, October, whatever it might be. And then that's when the software comes out. And my biggest gripe is that it's not ready yet. And why I choose to be annoyed with that is the fact that for how many issues, how many failures to launch Apple's had with their primary features of Apple Intelligence, Siri always being a rough area, and just how buggy iOS 26 is on its own. I just wish that they would have a year where software was ready to be ready. Like, I wish that they could announce it when it's announced and be like, hey, the Gold Master, which is what it's called, but like as far as development wise, when it's done, it's called the Gold Master, unless they change the name of it, but that's what it's called from my knowledge. They're like it's ready to go. It'll be out in an hour. I just wish at one point in time that these companies could, and this is across the board, but I wish at one point in time these companies can just be ready to have the implementation of this software, these new updates, to be ready to go and be out. And even more so, I think that there could be a nice way of having it be be beta tested before that. Like they could literally, because again they announced it in June every year for the most part. They open public beta in June or in July usually, and then they will have you submit bugs. And I did it for like 1 or 2 years for the beta program, and it wasn't really that fun, and it made my phone way slower. So don't ever do it on your primary phone ever. But I did the public beta, and then and the reason why I pushed this so hard is because even once the actual Gold Master or whatever it's called, like when the official release comes out in September, October with the new iPhones, usually it's still not ready yet. Usually it's not done, and there's always like 3 or 4 more, again, more incremental updates that come out later on in like later October or whatever, and it still isn't ready yet. It still isn't fully fleshed out, and it's a thing where and I get it. Software is software. It's always going to have some bugs, whatever. But I just wish that for that these companies, these tech companies that are making a ton of money on revenue every year and make the most insane stuff, could just be ready with software and be like, hey, here's what it is, here's what it is, here's what it does. You can have it in an hour, ready to go, not in public beta, and or even do the public beta beforehand and just not call it whatever it is, just have these beta programs ready in like March and ready to go to where they're done by June. Now I'm sure there's like plenty of security involved with that, and so that's why I don't do it. But I just wish on a personal level that they could have these things ready when they are announced, because that's just more, it's just not, it doesn't happen. So that's kind of my overall thoughts about WWDC 26. The overall thoughts on just the parental controls. We'll see how they go. Again, I feel like whenever they do these presentations on video, that they're covering like the 0.01% of what's actually happening on the devices on software, because again, usually when it comes out, not everything is even ever ready for use. Again, hint Siri, hint Apple Intelligence when they launched. And then the one last thing I want to hit on too before I wrap it up is the fact that there was another YouTuber that I was watching his review on it, where they showed the device compatibility list for the new Siri AI, and what's crazy, stupid crazy to me, is the fact that only the newest, even I think it's like mid-level memory tiers of iPhones and devices across the board can even handle to run Siri AI when it launches. So that means that all the iPhone Airs, like the brand new 1-year-old phones that came out just last year in 2020 and 2025 October, are not compatible at all already with Siri AI. And that to me, I mean, I don't own that phone, but like, just to me, that by itself is an absolute failure on Apple's end, to where you announce and you announce some kind of soft launch this brand new, revamped, relaunched Siri Apple Intelligence combination thing, which is a cool idea, and there's more to it than that that I'll go into in other videos, of course. But then of course when you go into the compatibility list of what devices can actually use it, and it's literally like five devices. That's it, roughly, not to a T, but just to me that's crazy failure on Apple's part, because it should be workable on everything in the last like 3 to 5 years, in my opinion, because Apple's software has not changed that much. Their chips haven't changed that much. I mean, they do new chips every year, and they're always like 20% more powerful. But I would think or expect that as a big tech company, they can make at least 5 years of devices work with this new Siri AI. So yeah, so that's my thoughts on the whole WWDC 26 at an overview level. And again, I'll make more videos on everything individually, because there's a lot more to dive into that I didn't talk about in this one. But let me know your thoughts on everything as far as everything goes, in the comments below. And again, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and of course subscribe for more content about this and other things. Thanks for watching as always, and I will see you all in the next one.